you have a good relationship with Novak Djokovic. He's won this thing a couple of times. Has he messaged you yet? Any words of encouragement for this semi-final?
Yeah, he did after Rublev's match and after Fonseca's match yesterday. Yeah, I mean, Novak is a great guy, great champion. We have great relationship together, so I'm happy that he's following the results and that we could stay connected, at least in this way.
Well, you've got Novak on your side. That's a good omen, I'm sure.
Nobody saw this coming. Well, almost nobody. A 20-year-old kid from the Czech Republic just walked into Roland Garros and did something no player born in 2005 has ever done on a Grand Slam stage. Jakub Mensik reached the semifinals in Paris. Not the quarters, not the third round, the last four, at a major, at 20 years old. And while the tennis world was still processing what just happened, one man already knew this moment was coming. He just didn't tell anyone. That man is Novak Djokovic. Before we get into what makes the story so fascinating, let's talk about what Mensik actually did to get there, because this wasn't a soft draw or a lucky run. Jakub had to beat real players, serious players. He took down Andrey Rublev, a top 10 fixture who has been one of the most consistent performers on the ATP Tour for years. And then he turned around and dismantled Joao Fonseca, the Brazilian teenager who has been hailed as one of the most electric prospects in the game right now. Two massive scalps, back-to-back, in Paris, on clay, at a Grand Slam. That is not a fluke. That is a statement. And when you watch Mensik play, you start to understand why certain people in the tennis world have been quietly talking about him for years. There's a quality to his game that goes beyond raw talent. He competes with a kind of calmness that most 20-year-olds don't have. He doesn't panic when things get tight. He doesn't shrink under the weight of a big moment. He plays the ball, not the occasion. And on the biggest clay court in the world, that composure is everything. So, where does that come from? Some of it is natural. You can't teach that kind of mental makeup, but some of it, and this is where the story gets really interesting, comes from the fact that Jakub Mensik has had one of the greatest players in the history of the sport in his corner since he was a teenager. Let's go back to 2022, the Australian Open Junior Tournament. Novak Djokovic was there competing as he always does, but something caught his eye away from the main draw. A young Czech kid playing in the juniors, technically sharp, mentally composed, moving well, competing with a maturity that didn't match his age. Djokovic noticed, and Novak Djokovic noticing you is not a small thing. This is a man who has won 24 Grand Slam titles, a man who has studied the game at a level few players in history have matched. When he sees something in a young player, it usually means something is genuinely there. What happened next says everything about who Djokovic is beyond his playing career. He didn't just file it away. He didn't just mention Mensik in a press conference somewhere down the line. He reached out. He invited the teenager to come and train with him. He offered guidance at a moment when Mensik was at a formative stage of his development, when the habits you build and the lessons you absorb can shape the entire arc of your career. That kind of access, that kind of mentorship from that level of champion, you simply cannot put a price on it. And here's the thing, it didn't stop there. That's what separates this story from a one-time gesture. Djokovic and Mensik didn't just share a few practice sets and go their separate ways. The relationship kept growing. The communication stayed consistent. Novak kept following Jakub's results, kept checking in, kept offering that steady presence in the background. As Mensik moved up the rankings and started making noise on the tour, Djokovic was watching. When Jakub beat Rublev in Paris, Novak reached out with a message. When he followed that up by beating Fonseca to book his place in the semifinals, Djokovic messaged again. Think about that for a second. A 24-time Grand Slam champion, a man who is arguably still competing at the highest level of the sport, is taking time in the middle of a tennis season to send personal messages of support to a 20-year-old reaching his first major semifinal. That's not a public relations move. That's not something done for the cameras. That's a genuine human connection between two players who have built something real over the past few years. Mensik himself confirmed it. He spoke openly about the relationship after his run in Paris. He said Novak wrote to him after the Rublev win and again after the Fonseca match. He called Djokovic a great guy and a great champion, not in a rehearsed, diplomatic way, in the way you talk about someone who has actually been there for you, someone who showed up when it mattered. The warmth in how Jakub described it told you everything you needed to know about what this relationship actually means to him. Now, there's another layer to this story that often gets overlooked. Djokovic and Mensik didn't just share practice sessions and messages, they shared a final. Last year's Miami Masters, two players on opposite sides of the net competing for a title. That is a fascinating dynamic. A mentor and his student, both good enough to meet at the biggest moments of a tournament. And the fact that their relationship survived, that Djokovic came out of a competitive match against Mensik and their bond remained strong, says something about the character of both men. This is increasingly rare in professional sport. Mentorship at the elite level is complicated. Players are rivals. They compete for the same titles, the same rankings points, the same legacy. There are incentives to keep your edge private, to guard your knowledge, to let the next generation figure things out on their own. And yet here is the greatest player of all time choosing to invest in a young Czech kid because he saw something worth nurturing, because he believed the sport deserved to see what Mensik could become. And Jakub Mensik is becoming exactly that. A player who just announced himself to the world on the biggest clay court stage there is. A player born in 2005 who has already reached Grand Slam semifinal tennis. A player with the technique, the mindset, and now the experience to go even further. His Roland Garros run in 2026 will be one of those reference points people look back on, the tournament where the tennis world officially caught up to what Djokovic already knew 4 years ago. The mentor spotted it first. The student delivered on it in Paris. And something tells you this is far from the last time we'll be talking about Jakub Mensik on a stage this big.